Panzer Command has a very flexible play-by-mail system. You can use the traditional email file exchange, a custom head-to-head setup, or what I use most often is the online shared file system. I use Dropbox to play, but you can also set it up with other online file sharing systems. The first time you start Panzer Command Ostfront, you'll see a configuration screen. This is where you enter your screen size and various other settings that you probably won't change from battle to battle. It's also where you set up your play-by-mail or multiplayer settings. This screen will automatically appear the first time you play PCO, but after that you will need to choose the configuration screen from the initial game menu. On the demo version, this screen always appears when you start the demo. When you're playing play-by-mail, Panzer Command keeps track of your player name. You set that here. You can use letters and numbers, but the entry is not case sensitive, so PCO will read Rick capitalized and Rick lowercase the same. It's very important that any play-by-mail opponent you play also knows what your exact player name is. So make sure you let them know what you set this to. I'm going to set mine to Rick. The next thing you need to do is set the email directory you'll be using. The email directory is where Panzer Command saves your outgoing turns and where it looks for the incoming turns. The default setting is the play-by-mail directory where the Panzer Command is installed, but you can change this to use an online shared folder, and this is where the new play-by-mail system really makes things fast. By using an online file share such as Dropbox, you can play and exchange turns almost as if you were playing face-to-face if both of you are online at the same time. But it's important that your opponent knows where the shared folder is. If you're using Dropbox, you can invite your opponent to share your folder, or he may have already invited you to share his. But I'm going to browse to the shared folder that I've set up so that I can set that for PCO. Remember, if you need to change your play-by-mail location, you'll need to come back to this configuration screen. So I'm going to browse to my Dropbox folder. I'll pull this up so that we can see it. Dropbox gets installed into the libraries, into my documents, and I can see my Dropbox, and I'm going to set this up as my shared folder. And I've already let my opponent know that this is where the files will be located, and I've invited him to be part of this shared folder. Once we've set those, we can press play. Before I start my multiplayer game, I want to check my game options, so I click on the option button in the lower left. You can go ahead and set your options as you've agreed with your opponent. In this case, Paul and I are going to play with vehicle breakdowns on, with infantry fatigue on, and with SOP on. We'll leave the 460 zero turns off. These options are set by the person initiating the game, and they stay fixed for that multiplayer game throughout the entire length of the game. Once your options are set, we can go back, and then in the upper right you'll see the multiplayer menu. Click on that, it takes you to the multiplayer screen. The top bar of this screen tells me what kind of multiplayer game I'm playing. In this case, it's a regular play-by-mail game. I'm playing as player Rick. If you toggle this arrow to the right, you can play a hot seat player 1, or you can play as hot seat player 2. But we'll go back to the multiplayer play-by-mail game. You can see that I have a play-by-mail game going already. In this case, I have one game going against Eric and another against Inised. Notice the arrow is pointing to the right. This tells me that I've sent turns off to both of these players, and I have no turns from them to play. But I want to start a new scenario against Paul. So I come down to the opponent field and type in his player name. This is why it's so important to make sure that you know the player name your opponent is using. If I were concerned about security, I could set a password here so that only I could open my turns. But I'm not going to do that with this game. You'll notice that as soon as I started typing a name in the opponent field, the new game button became active. So I'll click on New Game, and notice that I'm taken to the familiar Select Scenario screen, where I can choose the scenario to play, select my units, and continue on to the setup phase. In this case, I'm going to be playing Novi Rizadeh. I'll play as the German. So I click Next. My units have already been purchased, so I'll start. You'll notice we're in the setup screen. For this game, I'm not going to change any of the initial setup, so I'll go ahead and continue. You'll notice a dialog box pops up. This is where I can send a message to Paul. And he'll see this when he opens his turn. I'll click OK. And we'll return to the multiplayer screen. Notice you can see the Novi Rizadeh that I've just created. The arrows are pointing to the right, showing that I've sent the game turn off to Paul, and it's a setup turn. I'm pretty sure Paul is online, so I'm just going to minimize this screen, and I'll wait for him to return his setup to me. Since we're playing using a shared file in Dropbox, Paul will have his turn already. When he goes to his multiplayer menu screen, he'll see a new game turn labeled Setup. He'll click on that entry and then click on his New Game button and proceed to purchase his units and set up his forces. Once he's completed that step and sent his turn back to me, I should get a pop-up on my screen from Panzer Command telling me that I have a turn ready to play. And there's my pop-up. I click on PCO icon in my taskbar, and I'm already back in my multiplayer screen. You can see that I have a turn labeled Play in my list now. Also, you might notice that I have another turn with an arrow pointed toward the left. This tells me that Paul not only did a setup, but also got his first turn orders in. But first things first. I have the turn labeled Play, so I click on it. And then I click the Load Game button. And now I'll be able to issue my first turn orders. I can see my incoming message from Paul, and I see that he didn't send one, so I click OK. Since I really want to show you how the play-by-mail works, I'm only going to give some quick orders to a few of my infantry units. This is the infantry platoon in the woods line. I think I'll have them just go and defend, hold fire for a good shot. If I've given all the orders to all of my units, I can press play. I won't send a message to Paul this time. And I'm back to the multiplayer screen. You'll notice that my turn has been flagged as play. This was the turn that was waiting for me already. I click on this turn now and click on Load Game. The first thing I see is the incoming message. I'll say OK. You'll notice that the game replay is already in process. Remember, PCO is a WeGo game, so now that we've both issued our first turn orders, the phase is resolved. And here's some action. I see some tanks coming in here. Let me go over and get a better view of that. I can rewind and watch this turn over again. You can do that as many times as you like. If you have a large battle going on, you might want to look at different parts of the battlefield and see what's happening. But I want to get to my reaction phase, so I continue by clicking the continue to the next phase, and you'll see that I'm in the reaction phase and ready to give my reaction orders. I'm going to go ahead and proceed to the next phase. I've already given my units the hold fire order. Now while I've been playing my turn, it's quite possible that Paul will have played another turn and I may have a turn waiting for me. So I click OK with no message. I see while I was playing my turn, Paul was also playing his, and I have another turn waiting for me. Notice that I only have the one file this time, and it's flag play. This is because I've just finished sending my turn to Paul, and he's probably watching the replay and issuing his next orders. But it's time for my supper, so I'm going to cut this short. I'll come back later and play some more. As you can see, Panzer Command manages your play-by-mail files for you, letting you know which ones are ready to play, and it also removes those that you've already played from the display. The play-by-mail system is pretty quick and pretty slick. The key to playing multiplayer using the shared folders, though, is to get your initial configuration screen set up correctly. After that, it plays almost as though you were sitting across from your opponent. Thank you.